Who are you?
How long have you been here, eh?
You dare disturb me.
Once it starts, there's no way of stopping it.
It's all right, don't be frightened, don't be frightened.
So, this is a great journey of...
Pull to open.
Pull to open.
Yes, and what do?
They're parasitic nomads who've been feeding off your selfishness and gullibility.
Bit basic, though.
What are you talking about?
Well, that's a good question.
What's that noise?
Here come the drums! Hello! And welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who, every single televised story in all 61 years of the program, in an order so random, you might even describe it as labyrinthine. I'm Pete Paschal.
And I'm Chris Taylor, and yeah, you might describe it as that. If you were going for just sort of very easy references to a certain Greek myth, without really expanding on that myth, or really going anywhere with it at all, really creating an interesting story, I'm sorry. I'm going straight to the commentary. I've jumped ahead. That's what happens when you're a journalist on a random adventure through random Doctor Who. And sometimes
Chris, I must say you're sounding a little bullheaded. I'll just say that right now.
I am a drunk ballet dancer bull in a china shop right now. You're going to need some red rags. I'm glad that you have a red Dalek behind you. Several red Daleks, actually, as it appears. That's perfect. It's almost as if you're looking to aggravate some bulls.
I might have to pan my camera. I think they're a little off camera since we're doing the split screen on YouTube. But I'll move my head over here. There it is, guys.
Well, before we aggravate any more inner bulls, perhaps we should briefly exit the china shop and find out how did we get here, Pete?
Previously on Pull to Open. So our recent random journey has been kind of all over the map, and that map involves a lot of David Tennant. 3 stories ago, we were actually in the far future in the year 5 billion, closing out the New Earth trilogy, even though it's the only story in that trilogy we've done. We closed it out.
That's right.
In a little story called Gridlock.
Yes, the randomizer seems to like endings of things at the moment, and that's kind of what that does. It was the ending of the New Earth trilogy. It was the ending for the Face of Bo, and it was the ending for the Doctor not talking about Gallifrey to Martha.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Well,
yes. Then where did we go?
Well, then there were more, I guess, beginnings.
Right.
For one, Peter Davison, it was actually one of his first adventures, and the very first one he filmed playing the role of the Doctor. And that was, of course, in his second adventure, 4 to Doomsday. A lot of numbers to keep straight there. First, fourth, second, and also 2 stories ago for us. No number 3s there. No 3s. Wow.
And if you add all that up, you get something numerologically significant, whatever it is that you get. You get a very significant number. But yes, we were at 4 to Doomsday, and that was, for me at least, one of the most amusing Doctor Who's we've ever seen. You might say it's a comedy. You also might say that it relies very much on talking about cricket, which might have been foreshadowing.
I think how amusing it is might rely on how much you want to see Adric knocked unconscious.
Oh, yeah. Sign me up for that. I will line up several times.
All right. And bouncing off that, we went right back to one Mr. David Tennant in his 10th Doctor era, but toward the end of that era, it was one of his specials where he was starring alongside a lovely lady named Michelle Ryan. And they were fighting some metal stingrays bent on destroying planets. There was also some bug creatures and a certain amount of overacting from various folks. So
a lot of overacting, a sort of a creation of a wormhole, if you like, almost like you're creating a black hole, and a species of parasites basically moving from planet to planet and destroying everyone. So that too might have been foreshadowing, because Pete, where did we end up next? As if I didn't.
Well, we ended up last time in the Planet of the Dead.
Yeah. guess, after.
Yeah.
And then is what
Then we went from the planet I had to say the title of the thing we were at.
Oh, God.
We went to the planet of the dead all the way back to season 17, serial 5, The Horns of Nimon.
Yes, the Horns of Nimon in one of the greatest seasons, or one of the most storied seasons, I guess we should say, of Doctor Who.
You could describe it that way.
You could describe it that way. And indeed, it may be described that way by more people if it had ended the way it was supposed to, not with the Horns of Nimon, but with Shada.
That's right. This is the season finale of season 17. It was never intended to be. It was actually intended to be the not so great filler episode before the season finale. We'll see if it holds up to that stellar reputation in our commentary.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like what the new Who equivalent would be of like if you took the finale away, like the season would end on kind of a clunker and it would look pretty bad. Like I feel like there must be a Moffat season where that happens. But also Moffat was pretty good about like having the penultimate story kind of build up to the finale.
Oh man, can you imagine series 10 ending in Eaters of Light?
Yeah, so that's a good example. That's a good example. One that also involves going through portals. But even that like might have been okay.
Yeah, we kind of didn't mind it too much.
Yeah.
We've done that one for the podcast. That's all right.
Sorry, we're not supposed to do this. I know. I'm letting my my review, my commentary on Horns of Nimon slip before we've even had a chance to throw me into a labyrinth, which I believe is approaching.
That's up next. Yes, there is the time in the podcast where someone gets tortured, not thrown to as tribute, but actually put into a torture device. Where they are completely subjected to the meanderings of a mythical beast. And that is, of course, the Whomoji Challenge.
That's right.
The mythical beast is, I don't know, the emojis we get. It's our readers. It's our listeners. It's everyone who submitted Whomojis.
You too are our mythical beast. You are our Minotaur, dear listeners. And I have no problem running my piece of string through your labyrinth. And experiencing the sheer terror that is the Whomoji Challenge. Because I do it for you. I do it for you.
Well, folks, before we get into the Whomoji Challenge, I need to put out the call. I'm putting out the Whomoji signal out onto the internet. Guys, we are running low on our Whomojis, okay? And so when you're listening to this is probably sometime in January. I would like you to take that time of year, which is usually, you're kind of like just easing back into the year. You want to get going, but you don't want to overwhelm yourself, so it's not too busy. It's okay to take a little break during lunch or during coffee. They get a coffee sometime in the afternoon, grab a Starbucks, and think about some emojis that represent a Doctor Who title and send them in to us. You can send them in via a review of the podcast. That's the absolute best way to do it because you go to the front of the line. So you can review us on the Apple Podcasts app. But you can also fire some emojis at us wherever we are on social media, and I'll mention those in a minute. But I know this isn't housekeeping. This is the Whomoji Challenge. So we're going to be talking about the Whomojis that we're going to subject Chris to in a second. And
I would say more this time of year is about resolutions. And
there you go.
If you have it on your New Year's resolutions list and the particular ambition to torture a podcast host, well, this is your moment, people. Just think of a Doctor Who title that you could represent in the form of emoji, either what goes on in it or something in the title, or maybe even a pun, maybe a dad joke kind of set of emoji. I love being tortured by them all, so bring them on.
All right, dude. We got some more to go from Anurin, our buddy on TikTok, and I like his remaining ones. Now, he's given us some single emojis. I'm actually going to save one of those. I think we've already spent too much time in the Whomoji Challenge, so we'll save the warm-up for later. I feel like you're warmed up.
Oh, God.
I'm going to go right into the
I was hoping for a single horns
teaser.
Emoji. The hook 'em horns emoji. That would be an easy right now. But, okay, go for it.
Sadly, no. This is a lengthy one. This is 8 emojis. All right, are you ready, sir?
Go on. Go on
All
then,
right.
Iron.
First emoji, female astronaut.
Ooh, okay.
Second emoji, male astronaut.
Oh.
Third emoji, rocket ship. Fourth emoji, $sign.
Okay.
Fifth emoji, another $sign. Sixth emoji, it's like I'm out of here, like whoosh, the whoosh emoji.
Oh, the
You know what
whoosh
I'm talking
emoji.
about? The cloud that's sort of coming from the side.
I've always thought of that as the fart emoji, but you.
Well,
you
I'm
didn't,
trying to
yeah.
keep it a little more PG here. Yeah, the fart emoji.
Yeah. Okay.
Where are we? Seventh emoji is a skull.
Okay.
And the eighth emoji is yet another $sign.
Oh, for
And that is
crying out
it.
loud!
I'm going to paste all that in the chat right now.
I was so happy when we started with female astronaut because I'm like, it's the impossible astronaut. Clearly, it's a female astronaut. It's got to be in that whole River Song season 6 of the new show. But then you're
Possible,
like,
but not the answer.
And then I was thinking rocket ship and $signs. Well, that for some reason got me thinking of oxygen and the that stuff.
And it's oxygen!
Oh, brilliant! I didn't know what the skull thing was, but I was thinking there's got to be a blind person emoji. Like that's how it would end if it were oxygen. But
Yeah, you'd think it would end with the sunglasses
Yes.
emoji. You know that's what I was kind of thinking. And the skull emoji is fine because the suits are killing everyone. But I think a zombie would almost be better, right? Because that's kind of what it was like. Everyone sort of assumed they were zombies until they realized, oh, it's the suits actually moving the bodies.
yes.
So anyway,
which could have also been Planet of the Silence of the Library, Forest of the Dead.
but I'm glad he put in more of those $sign emojis just to keep you on track. Whenever you sort of got off track, you're like, wait a minute, it's because it has to be some kind of anti-capitalist screed if there's this many $signs.
Which means it's either Pertwee or it's like one of the new Who ones. And I'm glad I got it. I was like, something by Malcolm Hulk? No, it was Oxygen. I like that this is sort of my comeback to the Whomoji challenge. Like you get to torture me, well, I get to critique your Whomoji.
That's right.
So nice one, Aaron. You'll definitely go in the codex with this. But I gotta say, the sunglasses emoji was right there. I think there is also a blind person emoji tapping a cane, which could have represented the Capaldi Doctor at the end there. But no, you went for another $sign, and that's fine.
Yeah. Well, if you ever want to do a special edition, go ahead, ping us again, either on one of the social networks or on a review. And if you too can be just like Aneurin, go ahead and contribute one of those emojis, which we could use some more of in 2025. All right.
Well, there it is. There's the end of my torture for this episode of Pull to Open. Thank you for that. And now it's straight into our commentary. No, it's not. It's straight into pulling from the bottom of the screen. Because if you do that, you will find, if you're on Spotify, Poll to Open, which is where you get to rate the story that we're about to view. I know that all of you Horns of Nimon fans are itching to rate the Horns of Nimon right now. But if you go back to the other podcasts, we keep the polls open. So everything that we're about to say about this poll, you can change quite significantly in real time. So if you're in line for all of the other Pull to Open podcast polls, stay in line. Go back and listen to, for example, Gridlock, which we have some results from right now. Now, to remind you, I basically forecast the election on this one as a winner for the Daleks, which is our rating for a good episode. Not brilliant, not one of the best, but good episode of Doctor Who. Whereas, Pete, you said it was Lala Ward's father. You said it was a Viscount banger.
You betcha.
Best
It's
of
underrated.
the best. And basically, it was pretty much a two-horse race between those two.
Right.
So, meaning that the fans out there, they either think Gridlock's pretty good or best of the best. And
Yes.
but I've got to say, the pretty good, the Dalek contingent have overwhelmed you, sir. and got double your vote. It came in at roughly 50% to 25% so far. So all of you Gridlock fans, if you listen to this and like, hey, no, wait, Gridlock's a Viscount banger, go back and vote for it because you'll make Pete happy.
Yeah, and also you'll outlaw these folks, these stragglers that are calling it either a Professor Hater, an Ogron, or a fixed point in time, each of which got a little bit of votes. The Hater, maybe, I guess, and the fixed point in time I don't really get, but I guess it's an old enough episode now that maybe it's nostalgia to somebody.
Yeah.
The Ogron I really have a contention with, though, because I'm like, what are you talking about? This is not a bad episode of Doctor Who by any stretch. I think most folks have the reaction that it's surprisingly good. Myself, I thought it was even better than that, and it's like surprisingly amazing. But I definitely get like, okay, you might not want to put it among the best of the best, but I don't know anyone who would think this is an irredeemably bad episode of Doctor Who.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you're just like dead set against having hymns in Doctor Who, or you really, really hate the old rugged cross, you might be like, no, that's ruined the whole thing for me. Or
if you think Doctor Who should just never touch Judge Dredd.
yeah, that is the Megacity 1 vote coming in there for the Ogron. That's like, no, you stole it. You stole that idea. Yeah, Alan Moore voting at an Ogron, like, stop stealing from Halo Jones, man.
If you were the one person, one of the people who voted that this was not a good episode of Doctor Who, or if you were thought it was the banger or a good episode, feel free to shout at us and tell us why on one of our social networks. We are on TikTok at Pull to Open, where we share several short videos all the time. We're at Pull to Open 63 on most other social networks. But if you really want to keep up with the show, there's a lot of discussion on YouTube. People are commenting all the time in the videos. We're commenting back. We see every comment. We love it when you guys engage. And you can engage even further on YouTube by becoming a true companion of the podcast. Feel free to go ahead, pledge to support the podcast there with a modest monthly donation and a Dalmatian. And you will get the podcast at least a day early, probably more.
Yes.
And also have our eternal thanks.
Yes, give us a Dalmatian and enter our domain, please, because who doesn't love Dalmatians? We need 101 of them, people. Please join, be one of those Dalmatians. And maybe you can enjoy with total satisfaction that you've contributed to this torture.
One more.
What is about to happen?
One more way you can, of course, support the podcast. We know a lot of you listen on Spotify. Yes, please interact with us by voting in our polls. Super easy to do just by pulling up from the bottom of the screen. By the way, you can also comment in case you weren't sure. This is kind of a new thing with Spotify. You can comment very easily on any episode. So just fire off your comments there. That's a good place to do it. And you can actually also support the podcast. And I have information. I have intelligence on exactly how that's done. It's just in the show notes, people. Just scroll to the bottom of the show notes. There's a link there. You can go ahead, support the podcast, and you can actually pick how much. If you only want to donate $1 a month, you can do that. So that's totally fine.
Can you do that? I'm saying this as a keen Pull to Open listener. Can you do it on Spotify via Apple Pay? Like,
I'm gonna guess yes.
Okay.
Actually, I don't know.
I'm gonna do it.
I haven't tried.
I'm gonna tip myself $1 just to try it out.
Yeah, dude, go for that.
Yeah.
But you can do $1 a month. You can do $4.99, $9.99, whatever you got, whatever you can spare.
I'm sure I'm not the only person out there who, like, with Apple Pay, it's like it isn't even real money.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even notice. $1, like, who even cares?
I know what you want to do. You want to do it just for the shout out, which, of course, you'll get on the podcast. All right.
Absolutely.
And that concludes everything we have to say before we have more to say on the Horns of Nimon. And we're going to go right into our commentary just as soon as one of us summarizes the entire story in record time.
My God. I pity the poor sacrifice who has to do that. Let's just find a planet based on Athens and get some sacrifices from there. In fact, if you're listening to us from Athens, please jump in at this point. Call us right now at Pull to Open headquarters. We will get your ping back in time, and then you can do this right now. This is
Do
your
TLDW?
moment. Yeah. This is your moment to rush in and give me the code from the past. There's a little Joy to the World reference there that everyone except
Ooh.
Pete gets. Because we're recording this early. Pete hasn't seen Joy to the World yet.
I haven't seen Joy to the World yet. Everyone in the world has, though. No, that's right, folks. It's time for TLDW, Too Long Didn't Watch, Too Long Doctor Who, where we summarize the plot in record time. And this time that is one Chris Taylor, and I'm going to offer you a bonus this time, though, sir.
Oh, what?
This being the new year.
Okay.
Yes. For every piece of technobabble you get right,
No.
syllable for syllable, if you get it perfectly right, you will get an extra 10 seconds.
Don't do that to me, because I will I'll try. Oh, I will take that.
Remember, no notes. It's got to be from memory.
No one's going to know that I'm actually just a guy who's pretending to be a prince if I just get those extra 10 seconds. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to keep the structure of the TLDW pure. Too long didn't watch, and too long don't watch, I think we might advise.
Ooh, yikesies.
For some of this. Yikes, I know.
All right. Well, without the technobabble, you will have a full 2 minutes because we give 30 seconds for every classic Who episode. Are you ready, sir?
Well, in the style of the Horns of Nimon, every 30 seconds, I'm going to just have a very long recap of what I was talking about 5 seconds earlier. No, I'm not going to do that.
It's a very Let's move, that is.
Right? I'm ready in the sense that I'm completely unready for this, and I've listened to the Terrence Dicks audiobook read by Jeffrey Beavers on Spotify.
Oh, wow.
Go add that to your list if you're listening on Spotify. I've reread the script. I've tried to understand what the hell is going on here. I still don't think I've quite got it, but we're about to find out.
We're about to find out now that we're jumping into the official pull to open summary of The Horns of Nimon in 3, 2, 1, go.
So there's this spaceship, and it's come from this planet that once was a giant empire, but now is serving something called the Nimon. It's got these tributes on board, and the spaceship takes a detour, because the co-pilot says, but then something happens, and the TARDIS gets sucked in, because the Doctor's got the dematerialization turned off, and it's becoming a black hole. They get sucked into the ship, and they discover that it's got a bunch of tributes who are being taken to something called the Nimon, and then that turns out to be this thing that this
30 seconds.
Dude called I can't even remember any of the names. This is what's screwing me up. This dude with a big collar who's been talking to the Nimon, which is this sort of bull-like beast that only he talks to, and he has this big staff of power because he's talking to the Nimon, and he thinks that he's giving them sacrifices in exchange for technology. In fact, the Nimon is just creating the conditions so that other Nimon can come through, these bull-headed creatures with horns that shoot lasers, and the Dr. Romana and Seth, who's one of these people running around the lots of corridors. They're in the power complex, which is where the Nimon is, and the corridors keep changing, and they keep having to hide from the Nimon, but more Nimon emerge, and there's a whole bunch of shenanigans involving K9, and the Doctor being taken to Sordid, which I think is the name of the dude, and Romana finds someone who was also trying to resist the Nimon, but also sacrificing
30.
He sacrifices himself to help Romana get rid of some of the Nimon, and others get sent in their capsule, and then they kill the guy at the end, and Seth dies, but Tekka, who's his girlfriend, is going to spread his legend, and the Doctor, Romana, and K9 get back in the TARDIS, and they actually manage to dematerialize this time, and I'm sure I've forgotten to mention a bunch of stuff that happens, but I was just like that's it, right?
And in time.
All right,
kind of it. Okay, this is going to be a first in TLDW history. I'm actually going to issue a correction.
Oh, shoot.
Seth does not die.
Oh, doesn't he? Oh,
Seth never dies. No, that doesn't happen.
All right.
You were he dies, and then what's his name is going to be the legend or whatever.
Oh, yeah. He
talk up his
die.
legend.
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all,
dude,
I'm sorry.
Seth's all right.
I want to say something about watching Horns of Nimon. First of all, I was so open to it.
Okay.
I was so open. I was so ready for this. Tom Baker is my Doctor. season 17 is where I started watching. Like the first, Destiny of the Daleks. We've been there. That was my first fixed point in time. Like,
Right.
This was the season I was watching. Like, I have so much goodwill for it. Douglas Adams was the script editor, and Horns of Nimon has sort of this, divided reputation in Doctor Who fandom, with some people being like, it's a comedy classic, like intentionally or otherwise. And I was so ready for that. Like, go back and listen to our 4 to Doomsday podcast, because I was so in the mood for Doctor Who that's so bad that it's good. Could not stop laughing at 4 to Doomsday. Was so ready to do that for this. But I was so confused by the plot. And one of the things I want to talk today about is the way, especially I think as a child, you watch Doctor Who sometimes and you're like, this script is so clever, I can't even follow it. And then you get to be an adult and you watch the same thing and you're like, this script is so dumb, I can't even follow it. And that, I think, has been my experience with Horns of Nimon, because I have vague memories of this from being a kid. And that should suffuse me with a light of nostalgia, but it doesn't. I'm angry about like how it's obviously a reference to the Minotaur legend and Theseus, like Seth is Theseus. Very clever. Sure. But it's not doing anything with that. And in fact, what it's doing with that is just making things more complicated. Like right at the end, the Doctor makes some reference to Theseus in the legend paints his sails the wrong color. And that
the legend... Yeah, I think what happens is because he doesn't put the flag up or sails up in the right color. It's supposed to be white.
Yeah.
That his father, this is something he arranged with his father, that if he saw the white flag, he'd know he's all right. So because he didn't put it up, his father actually like kills himself or something because he's so distraught. So it's kind of like this tragic thing that happens. I don't know. I'm not some scholar on Greek legends, but that's what I read.
It's not the fact that he's taking Greek legends, and specifically this Greek, and when I say he, I mean the writer Anthony Reed, who penned this catastrophe, and it was based on the fact that he'd done this show called The Lotus Eaters. And I think it was set on Crete or something, and then so he became fascinated with the idea of the labyrinth, and like, what if the labyrinth was a circuit board, and that was his entree into this, and and Anthony Reed also, I just recently found out, he contributed to a children's TV show after this called Into the Labyrinth, which I absolutely loved as a kid. And that too was based on
that was after this, right?
That was after this, yes. It was actually Bob Baker, another of Doctor Who legend.
This could be like his rehearsal, his little run through. He's kicking out kicking the tires on the whole idea and getting the bugs out.
But speaking of rehearsal, so what went wrong here was like the execution on a script that really doesn't do anything with its Greek legend. And speaking of rehearsal, like we should go straight to the end. The moment that people think of as kind of a comedy moment, where Soldeed, is it? I did get that right. Soldeed is the name.
No, I think you punted on the name.
The over the top. I almost said it. I was like, "Is that it?" Like, I find the names so forgettable in this. That may be part of the problem. I say it and then I forget it 5 seconds later. But Soldeed, who is Graham Crowden, right? He's the totally over the top actor who could have been the Fourth Doctor. He actually turned the role down. But there's a moment where he thinks he's in rehearsal. He thinks they're still rehearsing it. And that's why he does his incredibly maniacal laugh, which is just sort of insane.
Well, that's at the end. That's like his death scene.
Yes, yeah.
Where he gets zapped as he's pulling the thing, and he goes like, "You're all doomed," and he just kind of laughs.
Yeah, and he does.
Like he's just so into his own character.
I mean, Soldeed had so much potential, and as I want to give a shout out to Toby Hadoke here, who in running through corridors, an excellent book where they watch all of 60s and 70s Doctor Who so far, and this is the very last one, obviously. But he said that Graham Crowden in this was on a very strict scenery only diet.
Yeah.
And that totally describes. He does not. There's not one single word that's not OTT, right? He takes every and he's wearing the collar for it. Like I really had to go back to watching The Curse of Fatal Death to see if like that wasn't the same collar worn by Jonathan Pryce as the Master in that. Like, but basically, Jonathan Pryce is channeling Soldeed in The Curse of Fatal Death. If you've ever seen Stephen Moffat's first Doctor Who script, a comic relief sketch called The Curse of Fatal Death, that's basically Soldeed. But the fact that he let this maniacal laugh loose in rehearsal because he didn't know that they weren't actually shooting is kind of at the core of what the problem is here. It has been terribly directed. The director, this was his first and only Doctor Who, Kenny McBain.
Well, that's kind of where I would stop you in that, like, I agree that the direction is a problem, but I don't think the rest of it is. I think what happens is that the direction is probably what's keeping this from becoming a cult classic and like something that people just want to watch over and over again.
Exactly.
Because I think all the other elements are there. And I think one of the things I love Soldeed. I think he's hilarious. I loved watching this with Grace, like, because she, even at the young age of 11, got it. She got that this was like, oh, this is intentionally silly. This is, she doesn't know what camp is really, but I mean, she understood this is like, okay, they're going for something here that isn't serious. And I think the director just kind of probably wasn't very sure of himself and didn't want to go too far one way or the other. There are some good bits, which I will say I think are well directed, at least for the time. And I'd say it's the action in episodes 3 and 4 mostly, because there's a lot of shooting that happens in episode 4, and there's a lot of good sort of moments where it's like a last second zap here and there. Like specifically, I'm thinking of when K9 comes in and zaps the Nimon from behind. You're genuinely kind of surprised, like, what? Who got? Oh, K9. Oh, awesome! You're just kind of like, that's great. But what I think really worked for me with regard to Soldeed and his performance is that he's played off more against Romana than the Doctor, which is a very smart choice, because Lalla Ward is playing. She's the straight man in this whole thing, like from minute one. Yeah.
First of all, she chose that red outfit because she too was thinking red rag to
Oh, and she looks great.
She looks great.
She's always got the good outfits.
I mean, Terrence Dicks also describes her in the novelization as, looking like she's ready to go on a fox hunt. And she gets to use her natural aristocratic bearing, because I bet Lalla Ward has been on more than her share of fox hunts, being daughter of the aristocracy coming of age in the 70s. And so, she looks amazing. And she is almost the hero of this. Like, I would not be surprised at the end. And we'll get there, like, what if the evil plot had succeeded? But, like, it would not have been a bad outcome of this for the Doctor to, like, die in this episode. And for the show to just be about Romana going forward. They cut to, like, instead of the new Doctor Who titles, it's, like, Romana and company. And it's and I'll give her Sezam. I'll say that maybe I got Sezam and Seth confused. I think this is where I thought of the death of Sezam. Did I even mention Sezam? He's the dude that they find on Krynoth, which I just have to.
Oh, Krynoth.
Yeah,
Krynoth. Yeah. Oh, he's like the Soldeed character from there. I thought that was so funny. That was the one thing. It took me out of it, but by that point, I was so fine to be taken out of it because it is so campy. Because it's like, okay, everyone on the planet is dead except for this one guy who happens to be the one guy who is the bamboozled, Soldeed equivalent. And he's just wandering the capital with his staff, and they, for some reason, the Nimons can't deal with that and track him down or whatever.
Well, imagine if someone were to refilm the Minotaur legend, and then in the final portion of the Minotaur legend, as a complete Deus Ex Machina, you throw in Moses from the Bible. That's basically Sezam, because his name is Moses with the things transposed, right? That's where he came from. And so, yes, he wanders in with a staff like he's from the wrong story, because he is. He's just there to just like give Romana the it's called Jasonite. the material that he's got, which just made me roll my eyes so hard. I've yet to retrieve them from the back of my head. And just gives it to Romana, and then she's like, "No, you can live too. You can come with me." And he's like, "No, this is your best chance. I will hold them off." And she's like, "Thank you, Cezanne." And that's how many times have we seen that structure in Doctor Who? Oh my god!
All the way to Whitaker, where it's all like, remember like the Timeless Child stuff, and I remember. I can't remember the guys. The old guys like, "I'll take on the cyber Amory and Master, and you go rerun off, Jodie." Yep. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that, but I mean, but again, I'm sort of saying, like, by that point, I thought they're almost that not in particular, but they're kind of almost subverting certain Doctor Who tropes here, either by just playing them to the hilt, or having sort of knowing comments about them. Like, and this works better with Tom Baker, who is, just kind of a better comedic actor to be able to do that with his tone. Like, I really liked when he first arrived on Skonos, and he says, he's basically captured again. He's like, I got the line here. It's like, "Oh no, not again. How's it wherever I go in the universe, there's always people pointing guns or phasers or blasters. Now, don't do anything hasty. It's just a flying visit. Take me to your leader."
Yeah, and one gets the sense of the fingerprints of the script editor. Mr. Douglas checks notes.
Yeah.
No, of course, Douglas Adams, my one of my favorite writers of all time. Love you, Douglas, but you were kind of asleep at the switch here. Which is fair. He was in the middle of becoming famous. For writing The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and that was really taking off for him. And he'd already said he was done at this point. Graham Williams had already said they were done. Like they were so focused on Sharda, which was also Douglas's. But you can see his fingerprints in some of the lines here, which have an almost Moffatiness to them. There's a bit where the Doctor, and like you say, they are subverting tropes. So it could have been a brilliant subversion of Doctor Who, like the time where he walks in to find a bunch of council members, like he's trying to escape, and he just walks around. It's a very Tom Baker line. "Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, I'd like to say one thing. Let me make it perfectly clear. I stand before you, desperate to find the exit." Which is a nice line. I think Baker kind of gambles it a little bit, but it's But to your point, like that's what this could have been, right? A very cheesy episode of Doctor Who, a bit like the Pirate Planet, that is kind of simultaneously subverting tropes and giving us a great science fiction story at the same time. Right?
Yeah, totally. And that was wholly done by Douglas Adams in his early time with Doctor Who. So it makes sense that he was sort of trying harder back then and, not on his way out. Yeah, there's a few other great lines. I really like the one where he goes, someone says to him, "Later you'll be questioned, tortured, and killed." It was like, "Well, I hope you get it in the right order." It's like, okay, that's pretty good.
And the thing is, when we're talking about those lines in isolation, they sound great. But I think that this is like the Horns of Nimon is like a bad comedian who does a stand-up routine and puts all his worst jokes first. Because we have at the start the Doctor and K9 messing around in the TARDIS.
Yeah, agreed.
The Doctor gives the kiss of life to K9. There's a point where they try to use the TARDIS, and they have the boing, whiz, crash, whoop, pop sound effects. That is literally
right.
I recognize that from every BBC comedy show. There's a point where he sticks a rosette on K9 that just says first place.
Right, yeah.
Which is
that was I remember that. That was really good, actually. I thought like that's a good gag. I like that one. It's real, like it's almost right out of The Simpsons. And I think that's a tone setter in my view. I think that one works. I think the goofy sounds did not. And the mouth to mouth, not so good. Again, I think they just sort of are throwing a bunch of spaghetti against the wall in terms of making things funnier. And we said this a little bit in the Destiny and the Daleks podcast, like how much jokiness is too much. And if you saw that as some kind of experiment, there's no reason you should be still experimenting 5 episodes later, right? Yeah. You should be a little more confident about what's going to work and what isn't. and I think they're not, like, and having the Doctor spend the first couple of episodes mostly with K9 doing this stuff with the gravity well, and then the planets come in, and then they spin the TARDIS so it turns it into a cricket ball, which I don't know what interpretation of physics that works, but I guess okay. But
Which
it's
also
mostly
feels
just
like
that
a Douglas Adams imprint, but a fingerprint, by the way, because of course Douglas Adams wrote Doctor Who and the Cricket Men as his first script when he was still in school. But it is a nice connection to Four to Doomsday again, which ends with a cricket ball being used in space with dodgy physics. But so again, it sort of feels like, but like to my earlier point, like that is before the cricket ball reveal happens. They're heading. The Doctor and K9 are heading straight for the asteroid, and for the cliffhanger, Tom Baker does this comedy bit where he sort of like claps his hands over K9's ears,
right?
As they realize they're heading for this asteroid, and I just like you're doing
a planet.
Comedy, it's a planet, and you're doing a comedy bit for the cliffhanger. Like that just doesn't, So I'm more mad at Tom Baker after watching The Horns of Nimon, which is not a good, comfortable position to be in when he's my favorite Doctor.
Yeah. Did it strike you that like Horns of Nimon is a little similar to Terminus? I noticed where you kind of encounter this group of people on their way somewhere, and there's a ship, and stuff goes wrong, and the Doctor and his companions are separated, and you have to deal with issues on board the ship. But then all the action moves to that central location where there's a big beast.
Yes,
that's sort of at the center of everything. I wonder how much, I forget who wrote Terminus, but if they were like kind of trying to borrow a bit from this.
Well, there's almost nothing in the Horns of Nimon that Who hasn't done before, right?
Yeah.
And it does seem to be a mark of the Graham Williams era that there was this attempt between 77 and 79 to make Doctor Who more Star Wars. I'm wearing my Star Wars t-shirt today. And this sort of seems like a prime candidate for that, where they sort of think if they just have the look of Star Wars with like laser weapons blasting, and especially the suits that Seth and Tekka and everyone are wearing.
Yeah.
That like they look together a little Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker from the poster-ish. Right. Which is not signaling to us that Seth is pretending to be a prince. Right? He's just dressed exactly the same as everyone else.
Yeah.
They've just got these Star Wars like gold outfits. And it serves to add to the confusion. And there's almost this arrogance that we're the BBC, we can do Star Wars. That's all we need.
Yeah, I wish they'd thought about that, because they do seem kind of nameless and faceless, and they're all kind of together. And even though you get a little bit of Seth and Tika, mostly from Tika, because she's, for whatever reason, feels like Seth is the greatest thing ever. And I guess there's that whole Prince thing, but she's really drunk all the Kool-Aid on who this guy is. Even there's zero reason to. I mean, you could really, like, from one line of his, you realize, oh yeah, this guy's no leader.
Yeah.
Like any objective observer would be like, no. But
exactly. So it's totally a prime example of showing of telling not showing, right? Which always destroys a script, and we can see this in Horns of Nimon. Like, why does Tekka need to tell us, or Seth need to tell us that Tekka's?
Yeah, I wish they'd thought about that a little more, because it's supposedly, if history would go as the Greek legend goes, Seth would end up being the hero. Yeah. I like the idea of the Doctor coming in and being the real hero, he and Romana and K9, and that's, they're more forgotten about, and then the legend comes that Seth is the hero. But you don't get enough of Seth and what he's about, and all, that whole backstory. Really, it's just kind of like, it's just kind of there. But I do like, again, there's a lot of criticism about the Greek mythology here, and that doesn't really go anywhere. That could have been an interesting thing. Everything's set up for it to do that. Yeah. In terms of taking the legend and sort of telling it in this, really Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are the heroes or whatever, like that, in that kind of way. but it doesn't really follow through with it and waste a lot of time with Nimons running around.
We don't get any backstory for almost anyone in this that would make them interesting. And I've got to give a shout out to Terrence Dicks for his novelization, because he gives Soldeed one detail that made him come alive for me, which is that Soldeed was a lab technician. Like, he was just some schmo who just happened to be the one that they sent to I guess, go through the portal for the first time and meet the Nimon, because there was no one else available. And then he becomes this power mad, power crazy kind of guy.
So that's why he's dumb.
Yes.
Like, he's politically naive and gullible.
Yes. That's why, and it's sort of his insecurity and his weakness that are driving him forward, and that's why he's shouting and being over the top. That made Soldeed come alive for me in the book, but not in the show. And with Seth, again, it's like he just tells us, when he tells Romana, "I'm not even a prince. I'd run away from home. I was on the road. They found me, and rather be sent back than be sent back, I made up some story." Now, that's a great, great premise if you actually use it. Like, actually dress Seth up as a prince. Actually have him acting princely at some point. And instead, that whole scene is just better for Romana, because she's doing some very Moffty lines. Where Seth says, "If we don't pay tribute, the Nimon will destroy us." Romana says, "Sounds like an insecure personality to me." Seth, "He lives in the power complex." Romana, "That fits." Which is great.
See?
And now you see why Stephen Moffat called the God Complex the God Complex, right? Because it's the power complex, but it's the God Complex, right? So he's clearly a Horns of Nimon fan, and that, of course, the creature ends up being a cousin of the Nimon or something.
Yeah, and it's all the parallels with the labyrinth that changes shape.
Yeah.
Like in the God Complex, it's all the hallways that sort of change. It's all, whenever you get a Minotaur, you got to have a maze.
Got to have a maze that changes shape, which in theory, the maze changing shape could have been awesome and spooky. And I love that idea that they go back to where they were, but no, there's a wall there now. But again, because the director was asleep at the switch, you don't really see what is even going on.
Yeah, and it's not even. Is it just random? Is someone manipulating it? And the lighting it's all just looks the same. And the only peril is that the Nimon are around, or Nimons, whatever the plural is, and.
No many.
You know what I mean? Like it's not like there's ever a moment where you think it would be perilous, where they come to a dead end that wasn't a dead end before. A couple people are separated here and there. It's just one of many things they just don't make a lot of.
I mean,
it's just there for window dressing.
In our last commentary on Planet of the Dead, we rolled our eyes, or at least I did, at the alien claw tapping on screen as Doctor approaches, which is such an old Who trope. That's actually all you needed here, right? To say, the maze changes shape every time you see a Nimon hoof, I guess, tapping on a picture of the labyrinth. That would have been cheap and easy. And while we're talking about the Nimon hooves, they were actually ballet dancers, right, who were forced to skitter around in 12-inch lifts.
Right. They wanted to make them look tall and menacing.
And they just made them look drunk.
I gotta say, the Nimon are memorable looking. I'm not saying it works. I will say that sort of big head with the two pointy horns and the loincloth. I mean, it's making a statement.
Loincloth is fantastic.
And they're all wearing it.
Yeah.
There's one outfit for Nimon's planet, whatever planet it happens to be at the time.
Yeah.
Which is, again, that's another trope in all sci-fi. It's always the same outfit, but I think it's hilarious that they're doing this. I get it for the god, the guy pretending to be a god, it makes sense to have the loincloth, but everybody?
Everybody. I gotta say, I gotta look at those loincloths and use the Stephen Moffat line from Day of the Doctor, which is compensating for something. I know that. And by the way, good God, the one bit of the Minotaur legend that always gets skipped over is how the Minotaur was created by the mother of the Minotaur getting fitted by Daedalus inside a cow costume, a cow that allows her to be inseminated by a bull. Yeah, so we skip over that bit, but like I think they're making us try to think of it with the loincloths. Dear God.
Oh man! So one performance we haven't mentioned until now is Malcolm Terrace as essentially the co-pilot, which I think has a name in the novel. But I will say, of all the people who understood their assignment, I think he understood his best, which was only to yell "weakling scum" as often as possible to the tribute. And he was like, that was one of the funnier things too. It's just, and so by the third time you're just waiting for it, and there it is, weakling scum.
So here is a reason why I know that like this was not so bad it's good for me is that it was only after I watched that I learned that there is a famous scene where he tears his pants during the death scene. I did not see that. Now, normally, I would have been like, oh, so bad it's good. Let's go back and watch that scene again. I want to see him tearing his pants. And I could not. I could not watch it.
You just didn't want to?
I didn't want to. Yeah. Like, I could have done a whole history corner here, by the way. We're not going to get one. But it's like, I don't think you deserve one, Horns of Nimon.
A pants history corner or Greek history corner?
Yes. A brief history of people tearing their pants as they die. No.
Anyway, I thought he was good. He's, the guy you love to hate. And when he's outsmarted by both Saldid and the Nimon, it's quite satisfying. So I thought that was pretty great.
He's definitely in the long line of a lot of shouty functionaries in Doctor Who. Like I go back to the mutants. Of the Pertwee era, but again, gives you this feeling that they're just like taking a grab bag of elements from classic Who, right? He's one of them.
There's a lot of shooting. There's a lot of Doctor Who trope of them hiding behind things, mostly computer consoles towards the end, and the Nimons are just like completely blind and can't, which is too bad because I kind of wanted to take somebody seriously at some point. Like this is the thing. Saldid is so over the top, silly, and gullible. He's never really the villain that of the story very much. But the Nimons could be, but they just end up being incompetent. And they're just kind of goofing around, and they don't even really shoot people all that much. And I kind of couldn't figure out why. There's a point where they just kind of want to capture the Doctor, but that doesn't last very long. And I guess the only thing I can figure out is that they just don't like to bend over because they seem to need to bend over every time they use their horns. It's like, okay, somebody cover me. I've got to look down now because I want to shoot someone. It's kind of like, well, how do you aim that thing if you're looking at the floor? Yeah,
bending over. I'm starting to realize for a Nimon, that must be like there's a 50-50 chance of you putting your back out if you bend over. And especially if your hooves are 12 inches high. And
you'd have to sort of
rather
extend your foot back.
It is rather like the Nimon, like in the process of their evolution, the Nimon just learned to walk upright yesterday.
Yeah.
They're still working it out.
That would explain a lot, actually.
Explain why they look drunk and why they only fire their horns when absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I never quite figured out why the planet they're already on, Corinth or whatever it is, or it has to blow up. Like, I guess that's part of their whole MO is that they go to a planet, pretend they're gods. They only send one at first, make all these promises, and then once they have enough trust and have enough power built up, they just sort of invade en masse, which is like, okay, fair enough, simple enough. But then why does the previous planet have to blow up? Because that seems to be a very dangerous way to keep executing your plan. I guess they're taking the power from the core itself or something, which is like, well, maybe you just want to lay back on that towards the end of your plan until everybody's off.
And you know what else is confusing is that the complex that's on, I'm just going to call it Corinth because I can't remember the
Krinoth. That's what I call it Corinth too. Yeah.
No, but like when it comes to something when the made up name is like so impossibly bad that you're just like, oh, that's so obviously Corinth. I'm just going to say Corinth. But there's a power complex on there that we're in at certain points. Right.
It's
supposed to be, but it's exactly the same corridors, and this is part of what got.
Well, no, they were a little different. That's the thing. I think they worked fairly decently. At like the corridors were slightly different. I think they actually might have used parts of the set for the antechamber or whatever it is with in on Skonos, because the actual corridors of the labyrinth weren't quite the same. So I paid attention to that. I thought it was actually okay. Good. This does look like it's a little bit different. Again, this is this planet. That's the other planet. So I got that.
Yeah, so many elements here that I thought that I was going to like. Or in retrospect, I'm like, oh, I should have liked that element. I like the idea of the Skonos Empire being an empire that's kind of down on its luck.
Right.
It has a civil war. By the way, there was a cut line about how no civil wars are ever civil, which would have been clever and sounds a bit Douglas Adams-ish. But they didn't even cut that. Like the editing on this was all over the shop, by the way. But yeah, I like the idea of the Skonos Empire being like, oh no, we desperately need to rebuild the Skonos Empire so much so that this technician dude, Saldid, is mad for drunk on power because he's like just some like Brexiteer who thinks he can rebuild the British Empire, but he's just some technician dude who voted for Brexit. I like that idea. It has so much potential, but again, because I've just got no toehold here for what's going on, it just sails past.
Yeah. Well, for me, the toehold was Romana. Romana is really, really good. She sort of holds it together. The Doctor sort of checked out at various places, and he's kind of, he's in prime Tom Baker zone where he's just kind of doing stuff and making a joke here and there and not really looking at people. And he's sort of marching towards the end, but Romana is left to then talk to people and actually have scenes. And so I think with her as the anchor, and particularly with her exchanges with Saldid toward the end, where she has a very Doctor-like exchange where she goes like, "How many Nimons have you seen?" He's like, "I don't know." "How many?" It's like 3. And she's like, "You'll face it. You're being invaded." It's like, okay, that was great.
I don't think we've even mentioned Romana's Sonic.
Oh yeah,
which isn't quite clear from the prop. Right, because it's a smaller prop, but again, something could have been made of that. Oh, it's smaller than the Doctor's Sonic. Judge me by my size, do you?
They got his and her Sonics.
Yeah, to quote something else that was being recorded in 1979 in London that was actually brilliant. Empire Strikes Back, but yeah, there's a good bit. The Doctor calls Romana's Sonic a bit basic, and then keeps trying to steal it. Basically, but again, that isn't quite clear that that's what he's doing, and the scene is so badly written because there's a guy the captain guy's holding them at gunpoint throughout this scene as they have a chat about their Sonics.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's very Time Lordy. I thought that was okay, and then she sort of leaves it in the room. Yeah, because the script calls for her not to have it later.
But you're right. So, she almost totally is the Doctor at this point. Like this is. And again, that could have, if they'd leaned into that could have been brilliant. It could have been like Missy in World Enough and Time. The Doctor's like remote controlling her, like she's pretending to be the Doctor. Like you could have had something similar here, right? If you'd just been like, "Oh, Romana, I've taken the TARDIS to pieces. Like I can't even figure this out. I'm going to be in here with K9. You go be me, right? You're a Time Lord. You go be a trainee me." And that would have been great because that would have explained what's going on. But as it is, like I said, I'm just rooting at the end for the Doctor to die and the show to be about Romana from now on, which is not great.
The ending in particular is just so like goofy, and it's almost so run of the mill. Like it honestly reminded me of like a lot of Star Trek endings when they're all just kind of on the bridge and having to laugh. Yeah, and they're kind of there in the TARDIS, and they're joking about the Greek legend and painting the ship white. And he's like, "I've got to fix things." And the old girl's still got several centuries in her yet. Yes. And it's like, she says like, "Thank you, Doctor." It's like just this goofy exchange.
Yeah. And he says, "Not you in the TARDIS." And yes, to your point, it should have actually then cut to a freeze frame of them going, as they stand around the TARDIS console, credits over it. Like that was actually the last. Instead, we cut to the last time tunnel ever before the modern era.
Well, there's a lot of last that this story is known for, as we were kind of noting at the very beginning. I mean, obviously, it's the season finale. It ended up being it's the last story of this era, not just the time tunnel, but produced by Graham Williams. It's the last story not produced by John Nathan Turner. in the entire classic run.
Yes, the last run of that Delia Derbyshire music.
Yep. Last of that, the last David Brierley appearance as the voice of K9, which
thank goodness.
nothing against you, David, but yes, it's good that John Leeson came back. So there's a lot of laughs here. So yeah.
And
whatever you're going to make of that.
We should also mention Horns of Nimon has kind of been held up ever since as like bad Who, and it was really exploited by John Nathan Turner, who was coming in with Graham Williams' recommendation as the new producer, and basically he used Horns of Nimon ever since to say, we're not doing this, like this was an idea, this is as bad as it got, this is why we're going in a new direction, we're going to change everything, and kind of using it a bit unfairly as a scapegoat, as a sacrifice, if you will. And just, and then producing stuff that wasn't as, I mean, at least credit to you, JNT, when you did your own Horns of Nimon in the form of 4 to Doomsday, a season after this, at least you made the script followable while it was laugh out loud funny, at least for me, so I feel like I've learned something about JNT in the process of this, and what makes Doctor Who funny and what makes it just awful.
Nice. Sounds like you answered a good question for yourself, but we're going to have to move on to our own questions to answer. And those are, of course, the 4 questions to Doomsday. Speaking of Doomsday.
Had to get my Graham Gardner laugh out of the way once in the podcast.
All right. First question. Why did the randomizer take us here?
Well, clearly there's a Joy to the World connection.
Oh, okay.
Dear listener, not only in the fact that I will say about the Horns of Nimon, pardon my French, but what the French is going on here, but also like the God complex connection, which you know about, dear listener, but Pete doesn't. So I'll just leave that out. And obviously, the God complex is connected to Horns of Nimon.
Damn it!
Yeah.
Well, I just thought this kind of evoked a similar feeling as Planet of the Dead. I thought there's a sort of off-balance randomness that Planet of the Dead has. It has sort of like a bunch of, strange, like, again, Doctor Who episode ingredients. It's got a companion that's very different. But it does have a story, right?
Charge, yes. Has more of a story. But yes, it has a companion who's taking charge and thinks that she's the bee's knees, with a little less to it than Romana. But Romana, as we noted in the Planet of the Dead podcast, was the inspiration for Lady Christina. So there's a connection.
Exactly. And you kind of had an over-the-top performance there. You have, oh God, who was the guy who played Malcolm?
Yeah, Lee Evans. Yes.
Lee Evans. You also got a little bit of goofiness going on there.
Too much goofiness, yes.
Yeah, you had a little bit of a, similar ingredients coming out. And
you've got a wormhole being created as opposed to a black hole being created.
There you go.
And also you have a parasitic species that moves from planet to planet, just destroying everything in its wake. And they have, slightly different tactics for doing this. Obviously, the Nimon do it through getting people to pay them tribute, which I guess is a kind of a very energy efficient way of doing it, instead of the death rays, the whatever they're called, the manta ray things, who just like eat everything in their path.
Yeah, totally. So it's like basically Planet of the Dead is essentially a remake of Horns of the Nimon. It's just clear, guys. It's not even like, Terminus came close, but Planet of the Dead was it all the way. So there's my randomizer connection.
All right, so that's about it. And of course, there's the 4 to Doomsday connections. But before that, this is like, it's almost like the randomizer wants to write a paper on what makes Doctor Who so bad it's good. And I feel like these have been 2 very instructive examples.
Yeah, especially if you're thinking about gravity. All right, moving on. Here we go. The second question: what if the evil plot had succeeded?
Okay, so whose evil plot again?
Well, I guess the Nimons have an evil plot. They're evil. They're not. They're trying to fool Scononians. The scones.
they're trying to fool the scones, the scone empire, which has crumbled.
Oh,
See?
zing.
I can do these zingers as well as
So-
anyone else.
I suppose if they succeed, they are not totally blind to people hiding behind computer consoles, and they just capture everybody. Well, they probably just kill all the Anethians, right? And then maybe capture the Doctor and Romana. So then they just get all the Nimons to come to Skanos, and then they win. You know, it's like, hey, it's our planet now. We're just going to round you up and kill you, and then, you know, what do? They just harvest the energy until they got to do it again to some other planet?
I
that's what it is.
guess so. They just keep eating planets until the Time Lords pay attention.
Well, the thing is, they'd capture the TARDIS, right? So theoretically, they could start doing what they're doing across all time and space.
If they can actually operate the TARDIS console, and the Doctor has left out his Type 40 manual. By the way, that's another randomizer connection. The Doctor's reading up on how to operate the Time 40, just like Tegan did,
right?
In Fort of Doomsday. So I guess they are able, the skittering around on their 12-inch lifts, they're somehow able to operate the console. But just don't crash it into anything, because that sends the console room a fly-in, and there's going to be Nimon everywhere. But yeah, I guess you can speed up your whole process. I don't know what happens to Doctor and the Romana. Doctor and the Romana. By the way, if in the alternate world where this does become, the Doctor does die and Romana becomes the hero, like, I would love that for Lalla Ward to basically be the Peter Davison, because she's got a bit of Peter Davison about her.
A little bit. She's got the blonde hair, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that sort of sense of, like, you know, though she is, like, you know, small and pretty, she'd be fierce. Like, he can summon a lot of fierceness in that role. And but yeah, so I guess she doesn't succeed if the evil plot succeeds, and that definitely makes this poorer, because we don't get the line from Soldeed, "You meddlesome hussy."
Yeah. You meddlesome hussy.
Yeah, I would love it if in the alternate 80s where Romana was the succeeding show that succeeded Doctor Who. Every week they start with a cold open where she defeats another villain who calls her a meddlesome hussy. And she turns to camera and is like, "That's right."
Well, speaking of meddlesome hussies, it's time to move on to the third question, which is, where is the Clara Splinter? Clara Oswald, of course, splintered in time at the end of The Name of the Doctor. She's somewhere in every single Doctor Who story. Where is she in the Horns of Nimon?
She has to be somewhere earlier in the history of the Scone Empire. I like that. I'm just going to keep calling it that. Really making sure that everyone looks fabulous, and that is the most important element of the Scone Empire's culture, is to make sure that you have giant collars and, like, huge, like, feathery things on your costume if you're police.
Yeah, that Sorak guy, his helmet was, like, amazing. It had, like, it looked like, I don't know, I guess some version of Mercury, come to think of it, because I think he kind of evokes the Flash. I think of, like, the Jay Garrick Flash, which of course is based on Mercury. And yeah, like that, I'll buy that. That she's
90% of the budget, we should say, for Horns of Nimon, it looks like 90% of the budget went into the costumes, because they're pretty amazing, just out of proportion with everything else.
I'll buy that she's like the Anna Wintour of Skanos. She gets everyone to settle on it. She might have even picked out those loincloths.
Yes, there's also Nimon Clara, who's convincing them to wear, and she's like, "Hey, this would be a great scheme, guys. Is if only 3 to a pod. That's nice. How we do it. We just invade, time by time, 3 by 3. That's what we'll do. She creates an alternate Noah's Ark myth where they go in 3 by 3. I don't know.
Cool.
You normally use her to clear up plot holes, and I'm sure that's what you're about to do. But, like, there's so many here. It's, rich pickings for Clara.
I felt like there's a bunch of plot holes. The one I think she fills in very adequately would be if she's a chief technician on Skanos,
Mm.
and that when they capture K9 and they start dismantling him, that she essentially convinces them to put him back together, because it makes no sense. Like, why are you reactivating the dog you've just disabled? And then they reactivated him, and K9's like, put me on the ground, and the guy does. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Like, what? Like, aren't you working against the dog? Like, why are you doing what the dog's telling you to do? And
She
why
may,
wouldn't
in
you?
fact, be Soldeed's ex-wife. And when they were living together, they had a robot dog. And,
Oh, there you go.
That's why Soldeed is so ready to be like, oh, I can't be mad at you, K9. I can't dismantle you. I'm just going to put you back on the ground.
Yeah, it's like it's just time for K9 to get back into things and save the day. So let's just have the bad guys let him do that. Okay, fair enough.
That works.
All right, we're going to move on to the final question, the ultimate question, the only question that we are going to talk about after I tell you to go to our newsletter and subscribe. You can go to pulltoopen.net. That is the best place to go for that. You can subscribe to our newsletter and you'll get full notes on all of our randomly chosen episodes. So subscribe to that. There's always a few things that we don't get to, and you'll be getting some fresh content in that newsletter and some clever headlines sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely, and some more things that we liked about this, because I feel like we've spent too much time trashing Horns of Nimon. We like Pull to Open to give equal time to things we liked, so that's often in the newsletter. So if you ever feel that we're tilting one way or another during the podcast, definitely go to the newsletter. But also, if you're waiting to find out what we thought of this episode,
well, it's time. It's time for the fourth and final question, the only question that matters for Horns of the Nimon. No, wait. The Horns of Nimon. What did we think of this story? The Pull to Open rating system is 7 ratings. There's the Dalek, which we give to a good episode of Doctor Who. The Ogron, we give to a irredeemably bad episode of Doctor Who. Professor Hader, we give that to an episode that is not so great, but at least we learned something, or they tried something. The Viscount Banger, which we reserve for the best of the best. The Fixed Point in Time, which is a story beyond rating, usually for reasons of nostalgia. The Lady Cassandra, which is a paper-thin plot, but hey, at least it looks great. And this Zarbi, that's a story that's so bad. It's good.
Well, I really wanted to rate this as Zarbi. I need Zarbis. I right now, like, we're recording this mid-December, like, days are still getting darker. It's a pretty dreadful time all around. I want Zarbi's randomized. I was fully hoping for a Zarbi, but I can't rate it as Zarbi. It's considering Fixed Point in Time, because because season 17, because I think I saw this or saw bits of it, and it was kind of a fever dream for me, and I was like, why like when they start hiding behind the machines in the Nimon's lab, is it even the Nimon? I can't even remember where they are, but like they're hiding from the Nimon, and that triggered something in me. So I was like, maybe it's a Fixed Point, maybe it's a Lady Cassandra, because like bits of it are nice, like costumes are nice. The sets are kind of pretty, but I can't. And I got to say, I think I am grading this because I expect so much of Douglas Adams. So I'm mad at him. I'm mad at Tom Baker. I'm just mad all over, and I can't find any reason to avoid it. I'm afraid that this is an Ogron.
Ooh, stinky.
Nothing redeeming.
That's stinky.
Stinky and sticky. There is a line in here about something being sticky that landed with a thud as well. So yeah, once again,
well, I'm afraid I cannot agree. I think this does cross the line into Zarbi territory. Yes, it's bad, but I had a great time reveling in Soldeed's performance. I really, really like Romana in this one. Yeah, there's a lot of clunker jokes that don't really work. They underutilize a lot of things, most notably the Greek mythology that they base the whole thing on. But it's fun. It's fun to get through, and it's like, okay, it's kind of cool to watch everyone be goofy, and again, it's Douglas Adams doing Douglas Adams-y stuff, and you can't help but have some really good lines in it. So I think all that works. Yeah, it's a Zarby. I'd watch it again.
Not enough Douglas Adams-y stuff, I think, is the problem. He changed a few lines of dialogue, and I was like, oh, well, don't worry. No one's going to remember this one after they see Charlotte. Cut to 2 weeks later, Douglas Adams opens a newspaper about industrial disputes at the BBC. No, he says, and we freeze frame on his surprised face as he realized Horns of Nimon is going to be the end of his legacy.
All right, well, we flipped our ratings from 4 to Doomsday and put them on Horns of Nimon, but now it is your turn, listeners. You go ahead and rate the Horns of Nimon on your Spotify app. Pull up from the bottom of the screen. Is it a Dalek, Ogron, Professor Hater, Viscount Banger, Fixed Point in Time, Lady Cassandra, or Zarby? You get your say. The polls stay open forever, or at least for a very long time. So if you are encountering this podcast in the future, there's still time. Go ahead, vote, have your say.
That's right. And while you're doing that, we're going to make an escape back into our TARDIS, which, yes, but pausing only at the door to say, blast, I can't get it open. Or something like that, as Soldy does when he encounters the TARDIS. No,
hold on, Chris.
Only...
Let me put the time rotor back. I've been, pulled it out.
Yes,
because I didn't know we were going to do this today.
We should adjust our loincloths so as we do this. We should probably take off our 12-inch heels as we stand around that console, because it's going to be a tricky operation, because we have to operate 2 parts of our TARDIS, our randomizer, if you will, that pilots us through this insane journey that we call Pull to Open. And the first part, Peter's at the controls, should be at the controls right now, the Codex, which is the list of all Doctor Who stories in non-sequential order. Pete, I think that we need to add Joy to the World.
You're right.
This is
we're doing this before, but by the time we get around to doing our next one, we're going to be able to do it. So yes, I'm adding it right now.
Which means that the number that we have, the number of stories we have left this week is exactly the same, yes, as the stories we've done last week. We knocked it down by 1, and then Stephen Moffat, in all his brilliance, had to come along with George the World.
Had to keep making Doctor Who.
Damn it. I know. They tried their best with Horns of Nimon to stop them making new Doctor Who, but no. They had to, JNT had to come along, and then RTD had to come along, and
we're getting a very sizable chunk of episodes at the bottom of our codex that we have not done because of this rapidly advancing thing we call the future. Awesome. So what the number, by the way?
Yes, the number is 178.
Yeah. 8? You know what it is. 178. Yep, just the same as last time. 178 episodes.
This would be a fantastic time for it to hit Joy to the World, because we've not yet. So I've seen screeners. Just to explain why I've seen it. You, the audience, have heard it, seen it. You're listening to this. That's why I said heard. And Pete has not, because he's in the past. I've got screeners. So it would be wonderfully weird if it chose Joy to the World now, right? We would simultaneously. It would be very efficient, because we're planning to do a hot take when it actually airs. But also, we do a cold take later on. It has the opportunity. The randomizer has the opportunity to do something very funny right now, which is take us Joy to the World, which would not be without precedent, because it did take us to the church on Ruby Road when that was the most recent.
Indeed, yep.
Doctor Who.
It was a while back.
Yeah.
So are you going to dare to do that? What did we like to give the randomizer some challenges? When
Well, I should mention
journey,
we're doing this Horns of Nimon because we haven't even mentioned the essential. Another essential element of this plot is that we have random.org. We call it the Executor, which uses randomness in the upper atmosphere based on the number of Nimon ships bouncing around up there. And I enter 1 to 178, and then before I hit generate, and we get true bespoke randomness rather than algorithmic randomness, which is nonsense. We do like to give the randomizer some challenges, and it met both of our challenges last time, right? It gave us a transit system, which is what I asked for. Technically, that's a transit system that the Nimon has. You know, I wanted
Right,
more
true.
transportation ones, and boy, howdy, did I get a confusing transportation thing here. And I got to say, there is another reason for the randomizer to take us here after the bus-based episode of Planet of the Dead, because I did find myself thinking of the Nimon as like bloody buses. You wait a whole episode for one to show up, and then right at the end, 3 show up all at once.
Ah, there it is.
So I see what the randomizer was going for there. So I'm the author
Genius.
of my own, unfortunately, unhappy week of watching Horns of Nimon, so I'm going to be very careful about what I'm doing here, lest I end up with some soul deed-like ending.
Well, I'll go first then.
Okay,
I'll
you go
give the
first.
randomizer a challenge to take us somewhere. Well, here's what we decided. Horns of the Nimon. I always call it the Horns of Nimon.
It's a moving the. You can just insert it wherever you want.
It was amusing, but perhaps didn't work super well. I want to see the opposite. Show us something serious that didn't work super well.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
So then maybe that'll turn out to be a Zabi, but totally accidentally.
Yeah. Perhaps.
I like where you're going with that. I'm going to say, give us another performance where the actor is on a scenery-only diet. Give us something where someone, perhaps in the history of Doctor Who, I know you can do this, find someone who is chewing the scenery more than Sol did.
Well, we've done a lot of Tony Ainley ones already, so we'll see what happens. I don't love your chances on that, but we'll see.
This may be it. We may have reached the apex of scenery chewing.
I think we might have. All right, you ready for a countdown?
Do it.
All right, let's do it in 4, 3, 2, 1.
Moisturize me.
104.
Oh, yeah,
We're in New Who.
Here we go, 104. Oh my! It's replying to you from before where we wanted to fill out Planet Bingo.
Yeah.
We are at, do you know what it is?
No. I've completely
Planet
mind.
of the
Ood.
Ood. That's Ood.
Ood.
Very Ood.
The randomizer is very Ood. The randomizer has spoken through its Ood orb.
Nice. Got a
And
little
given us-
Dr. Donna happening here. It's going to be great.
Yeah, and are we doing the Ood in Ood order? Because
It's true.
we did do Impossible Planet Satan Pit.
That's right.
Almost this time last year, in fact, was when we recorded that.
Well, we also, this is later, but we've done The Doctor's Wife.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, I don't know if we have Ood Bingo, but
Well,
we're
yeah.
pretty close, right?
Not really a nude story. We'll have to go to, of course, the end of time to get full. Ood Bingo.
Right. Yeah.
But to that point, we did get Waters of Mars.
Waters
with
of
the Ood
Mars, yes.
standing in the snow at the end. But in terms of Ood focus stories, I think this is it.
It's pretty much
Right?
it. Yep.
The Ood appearances, but like we've done the this will be the second of 2 Ood focused stories. So
Yep.
looking forward to this. Well, thank you, Randomizer. I don't think there are very many over the top performances in this. Don't think I'm going to get my wish, but you might get the so bad it's good seriousness, because they're definitely trying to make like one of those Oxygen-esque capitalism points here, right?
Do a little bit. That's definitely some of that. But we'll find out next time, folks. Yes, and that's going to be in a little bit for us, but only in a couple weeks for you. But in any case, thank you for listening. This has been Pull to Open. It's a podcast. It is something that you might want to follow or subscribe to wherever you're at, especially YouTube. There's probably a bell icon too. Go ahead and hit that, and you can always get informed when we have new content. We are obviously available on all of the podcast platforms, and it doesn't matter where you prefer, or better yet, where your friend prefers to listen. There's no excuse, so go ahead and recommend the podcast to the friend. That's the absolute best way to support the podcast beyond all the things we said earlier. Martin West, thanks again for your music. It always levels up the proceedings. It's awesome. And looking forward to getting closer to completing that planet bingo card next time.
Yes. All right. Yes. Next time, where we'll see you on the Ood Sphere. And in the meantime, we really hope that your Ood year, your happy Ood year is going well. I was going for a Happy New Year joke. It really didn't work.
I liked it.
I got some Horns of Nimon-esque action going on there.
So that's why I liked it.
All right. We'll see you guys on the Ood Sphere. Take care, everyone.